All right. I think I've mentioned this just briefly, but I do want to say something specific about my father. My dad was the fifth of six boys, born to Irish immigrants in New York City who came to U.S. in the 20s. He enlisted in the Marine Corps at 17, right after high school, and after completing his 4-year enlistment, he joined the New York Police Department. When I was young, he shared with me an important moral stand that he took when he first started the job. And that is that he would not eat what they said on the arm. In New York City in the 60s, cops would be routinely served complimentary food and coffee by local establishments. As my dad explained to me, citizens who provide free food to cops shouldn't get better police protection than those who don't.
Yes, sir.
More importantly, it served as a slippery slope, indebting the cop to the donor when doing the job. Even something as simple as writing a double parking traffic ticket might adversely impact his decision. And so his decision to do that as a young man of integrity has stuck with me, because my dad bought his own meals. And if you deal with the members of the Attorney General's office, you can't buy their lunch. If you deal with an FBI agent, you can't buy their lunch. And the conflict between personal benefit and public service has always existed. It's in the Texas Constitution. You know, Article 3, Section 22 says disclosure of private interest in measure or bill not to vote. A member who has a personal or private interest in any measure or bill proposal pending before the legislature shall disclose that fact to the House of which he is a member and shall not vote thereon. And since that was passed, there's been a struggle with how to deal with it. In 1959, during the entire session, there was one bill that one senator recused himself on, and one bill that 4 members of the House of Representatives recused themselves on. And so they initiated a process where they had to file an affidavit of their interest. And that was sort of the baby version of the personal financial statement. You know, how do we address disclosure? How do we identify things that people can do? You know, the penal code is very clear. A person commits a bribery if he knowingly accepts any benefit as consideration for a vote or other exercise of discretion as a public official. And so then the question is, well, how do you know if someone is benefiting or not? The federal government makes it pretty clear. If you or your spouse receives income from a source that is more than $1,000, you have to report it. If you receive gift that's more than $375, you have to report it. And so what troubles me so much, and what is so frustrating, is that we've tried to figure out how do we deal with the personal financial statement when it comes to community property interests. And we passed a rule a year ago. There was no comment submitted on it, and there was no real discussion of it. And in the session, there was no discussion of it. Certainly none of us were asked our opinion about it until an amendment was filed 1 week before the end of the session and placed on the local and consent calendar, that all of a sudden no longer would spousal interest be reported on a personal financial statement. It makes I guess the it seems to just fly in the face of common sense that whether you run a spouse's business or not, if you live in the house paid for by the business, if you eat the food paid for by the business, if you drive the car paid for by the business, the people of the state of Texas should know what the name of the business is. It's not an opportunity to embarrass someone. It's an opportunity to provide the public with information from which to measure decisions and actions. You know, the vast majority of our public servants are trying to do the right thing for the people who elected them. But part of that is being willing to be accountable for the decisions you make. And there are some bills that are sitting on the governor's desk that just scare me to death. And I'll address the specific, okay? Spouses of government officials shouldn't be compensated by businesses that have matters before the official without disclosure of the compensation. Legislators whose husbands have clients who own red light camera companies should not drive cars paid for by red light camera companies while voting on red light camera legislation without disclosure of who paid for the car. Spouses of government officials shouldn't be awarded government contracts without disclosure of the name of the business owned by the spouse. Can't we all agree that that's the way it should be? It's very discouraging to be faced with proposals that are so anti-disclosure and such an effort to hide things from the public. We all know that our legislators are not paid their value to the state, and they have to earn a living. We know that. And that's why there is no prohibition on what they can do for a living, and there's no prohibition on what their spouses can do for a living. At the same time, each of those situations that I addressed only one thing, and that's disclosure. And if there's a theme that runs through my comments, it's disclosure is the only protection that exists in this state, and it's under assault. So I am very disappointed with the results of the session and where things stand, and frankly, it scares me.